Hi and welcome! Today we're talking about TV characters using my framework and some MBTI info. But my framework's more than that. Anyway, today we're going to look at Andor and two characters on there. One is Cassian Andor, the ISTP, or what I call the Free Agent, and Luthen Rael, the Chess Master, or the INTJ. So here's the thing. The beautiful thing about their story. What if the worst mentor you ever had, the one who lied to you, who used you, and never once said, "good job," or "attaboy," that person turned out to be the exact person who was the pivot of your life and made you the person you are today? So let's look at Cassian. He did not get Yoda. He got Luthen Rael. No wisdom, no swamp, no do or do not, do this, don't do that. Instead, he just got a man with a wig selling antiques who said, "trust me." And that man was immediately lying. And somehow it worked out. Or if you've ever been a person you consider like Cassian, or love one of those people, they're the type who keep people at arm's length, who survive on pure instinct, who don't do causes or speeches. Anyway, if you are one of those or love one of them, this one's for you. Because the person everyone underestimated became the spine of the entire rebellion, and nobody saw it coming, not even him. So how does someone like Cassian get from there to here? It starts with the most unlikely person imaginable, a man in a wig. So, enter Luthen Rael, antique dealer, very enthusiastic about antiques. Except he is not really enthusiastic about antiques. He is enthusiastic about toppling an empire. The antiques is just a cover. A very committed, very dramatic cover, complete with costume and wig changes. Underneath the performance, and we call the antique dealer is more like a catalyst, an ESFP. But he's really underneath that a chess master, an INTJ. Someone who thinks 10 moves ahead, trusts almost no one, and has sacrificed everything he once was for a cause most people don't know even exists yet. So he doesn't offer Cassian any inspiration, he doesn't offer him safety, he offers a transaction, and then immediately lies about the terms. Classic chess master energy. Technically, he told you everything you needed to know. And this is a man who will demand more of the free agent ISTP Cassian than anyone ever has. Not through warmth, not through wisdom, through something harder, the refusal to let Cassian stay small. So let's talk about the transaction. When Luthen finds Cassian on Ferrix, it's not a hero moment. Hero is running from the Empire, from a debt, from his own history. He's not looking for a cause, he's looking for an exit. And Luthen offers him one, like, sort of. He doesn't recruit Cassian for the rebellion, he recruits him for a specific job. Because a free agent who doesn't do causes will say no to some big grand philosophical mission, but he'll say yes to a transaction. He'll be a mercenary. So Luthen meets Cassian exactly where he is. Meanwhile, in Luthen's head, he has already seen 12 moves ahead. He knows what Cassian could become, and he's already made several calculations. And Cassian thinks he's just negotiating for one single thing. Luthen is playing a completely different game, and has been since before Luthen sat down and talked with him. This is what the chess master's vision looks like in action. They see your potential before you can. They've already written your character arc, maybe a couple versions of it, and you're just catching up. Which is either visionary mentorship or incredibly presumptuous, depending on how you look at it. In Luthen's case, it's both. So here's the fire that he lit under Cassian. So Luthen's mentorship strategy became clear very quickly. Step 1, find the person with potential. And he had found a team. Cassian's just the latest. Step 2, Drop that new person into an extremely dangerous situation with people who don't want them there. Step 3. Leave. That is not the Yoda method. Cassian arrives at Aldhani to find a team that hasn't asked for him, a leader in Vel who would genuinely prefer he didn't exist, and a thief named Skeen who's immediately going through his stuff and touching him. Classic chess master move. Luthen has selected his team carefully. He just hasn't told any of them that and about his master plan. But here's what happens when you drop a free agent into a hostile terrain. He immediately starts cataloging everything. Who's left-handed? How do they walk? Where the holes are in the plan. They don't know how to fly a ship with like a highway cargo. And Cassian can't help it. It's just how he survives. And in doing so, without meaning to, he starts proving exactly why Luthen brought him. There's one moment before the heist that's easy to miss, but Cassian talks to the group about fear. Not tactics, not the plan, fear. He says from experience this is normal before a heist. Fear before something that is completely dangerous and you don't know the outcome, fear about that is normal. It's not the same as failure though, or just not trying. You can be afraid and still move. A man who doesn't do causes, who doesn't do speeches, who keeps everyone at a careful distance, in this scene reaches towards people who need his steadying. He probably couldn't tell you why he did it. I mean, he wants to live, but he did something the group needed too. And he was the only one who offered that. Everybody else was freaking out. And Luthen had already left the building at that point. While Cassian's in Aldhani, there are 2 mirrors he comes in contact with. So he left him, with this team and something else, whether Luthen was intentional or not about this. There are 2 mirrors. So the first is Skeen. Another man, without a cause, another mercenary, reading the angles. He starts going through Cassian's things immediately and touching him, and Cassian, who just does not do touching of himself or stuff touching, is immediately done with him, and they have a confrontation, or a couple. But Vel has Skeen take his stuff and go through it, really, and then Skeen and Cassian talk off to the side, and they share a prison conversation, a secret the rest of the team doesn't have. Skeen tells him this whole cover story about his brother, the reason he's there, the cause he's here to serve, and Cassian files it away. Maybe something doesn't quite add up, and it won't until the escape. So when Skeen shows his hand, the heist was never about the rebellion for him. It was always just about the money. Take it and run. He tells Cassian, just us. And what does Cassian do? He shoots him. No speech, no hesitation. He made the calculation. This is wrong. This ends here. He didn't need to feel it or act correctly. The logic was enough. And he tells Vel what happened. Vel, who had held that team together through sheer force of will for months. She was reading the group dynamics, keeping everyone functional and moving. She didn't see it coming. And she was good at understanding how people operated together. She wasn't so great at spotting what people actually believed underneath their behavior. And Cassian had no interest in group dynamics, but he knew immediately when someone's story didn't hold up quite right. So that's Skeen. And now we have the second mirror, and that's Nemik. Young, brilliant, burning with belief. A Pathfinder ENFP, who's also a philosopher, and he sees possibility everywhere. He's great at the tech. And he sees possibility in a closed-off mercenary who definitely isn't interested in his manifesto speeches. But Nemik sees something in Cassian anyway. And Nemik's manifesto contains one line that lands differently than the rest. Empires are brittle things. The more power they claim, the more brittle they become. Now Skeen hears this and sees a kid who wants to save the world. Good luck to him. And Cassian hears it and files it somewhere quiet. He doesn't know why yet, but he will. And then, after the heist, Nemik ends up dying. Because of the cost of a rebellion is always real and always personal. After he dies, Vel tells Cassian it was Nemik's wish that Cassian take the manifesto. Not Vel, not anybody else. The kid who believed in everything left his words to the man who believed in nothing. And that act is not nothing. Let's talk about cold calculations. Luthen doesn't send an assassin dramatically, like he sees Cassian, yeah, he's a mercenary, potentially loose end, gotta go. So he sends Cinta, who's patient and quiet and ruthless. So she has to take some time to get off Aldhani, but then she goes and sets up in Ferrix and waits. But Cassian is already gone by the time she got there. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he got 6 years on Narkina 5. The chess master's calculation failed, not through confrontation, but through just simple logistics and things happening he couldn't control. Then we go to Narkina 5 for a couple episodes, and this is the Crucible. And Cassian never meant to end up here. Narkina 5 is the Empire's coercive control made industrial. Work or get shocked, win or get punished. The floor bosses maintain order over hundreds of prisoners with almost no staff there. Because when punishment is just random and survival depends on your performance, the people just police themselves. And some of the prisoners just can't bear it. They jump on the floor and deliberately end things. And Cassian sees machinery clearly. He always sees machinery clearly. He meets the floor boss, who is Kino Loy. Probably the most ISTP maverick kind of man in the galaxy. He's running his floor like a tactical operation, reading every angle, keeping order through sheer force of presence. He and Cassian circle each other warily at first. Two men who survive by reading rooms, neither willing to be read. But Cassian sees something Kino can't yet. And there are some events, but the Empire was going to kill them all anyway. There is no way out of the prison. Convincing Kino is the work, and Cassian doesn't do it through speeches, not through logic or patience. So he's trying to build a case, like link by link, until Kino's own calculation arrives at the same exact conclusion. But it does take time, and just things happen that put the evidence in their face. So they realize there's only one way out. But Kino's the leader, and he rallies the entire prison with those 3 words. One way out. And you see hundreds of men moving together. It works. But then at the end, we see they're on a balcony at the water's edge. Cassian's urging him to come and to jump, but Kino says quietly, I can't swim. So we have this moment where the hero that saved the day isn't going to make it. The man who led the rebellion of an entire prison floor, he can't swim. So Cassian leaves him there, not by choice, because there is no choice. The circumstances. So let that land for a moment. 2 people who couldn't make it through in this whole rebellion and losses for Cassian. Nemik, a pathfinder, a dreamer who believed the Empire would fall because history said so. He died with his manifesto unfinished but not delivered. And the other loss was Kino, a maverick, an ESTP, a pragmatist who didn't believe in anything except keeping the floor running until he could get out, who led a prison rebellion not for ideology, but because the logic was undeniable of what was going to happen to all of those men. So Nemik dreamed of freedom, and Kino, he calculated it. Both gave everything in the moment that mattered. Both couldn't cross the threshold themselves. And Cassian, the ISTP Free Agent, who's a knight who acts when acting is right, carries the memory of their sacrifices and both of them forward. It's what Luthen saw before Cassian knew it was even there. And we also learn what Luthen gave up in another scene where he meets up with Lonnie Young of the ISB. So this scene in Andor stops everything because you realize something about Luthen and what drives him. So we see Lonnie in an elevator going deep into a building to go meet with Luthen. And Luthen has set up Lonnie in the ISB years ago to be a spy inside the Empire. But at this moment in the scene, Lonnie wants out. He has a baby. He wants a life. He asks Luthen something nobody has asked before, or at least we don't see this. But he says to Luthen, like, I have to give up everything. What did you give up? And the INTJ chess master, who lives behind every move, whose pulls strings nobody sees, who sends people into fire and watches from the shadows. At that point, his mask comes off. He just had this built up energy. It wasn't strategic and it wasn't calculated. It was just completely everything, he says. He just lets himself go. He says, you know what I gave up? I gave up everything. His peace, himself, any chance at love, any chance at a normal life. He gave up joy, connection, the ability to simply be a person in the world rather than a weapon pointed at an empire. And then he says something even harder. To fight the Empire, he has to use the Empire's tools that he hates, like deception and sacrifice, the cold calculation of who is more valuable than whom. Lonnie has just told him the Empire knows about Anton Krieger's mission. And Luthen knows those men will fly into a trap, and they will all die. More than 100 men will die. And Luthen already knows, he can't warn them. But he isn't numb to the cost. And he isn't attached. He feels every single name he can't save. But he does it anyway. Because someone has to hold this. Someone has to be willing to become what he has become. Others don't have to then. So Luthen's not about villainy, and that's the most brutal form of service, carrying the weight of what the rebellion requires so it doesn't crush everyone else. The chess master has been alone in the dark for a very long time. And then we all end up in Ferrix, which is where the costs are really made real. So Cassian and everybody finds out that Marva dies, and so they're all converging in Ferrix. But Cassian first wants to save Bix, so he's not actually at the funeral where everyone expects him. He's already inside the ISB's makeshift headquarters looking for Bix. Outside, Marva's voice is playing to the crowd, recorded before her death, delivered after that. The woman who wouldn't leave Ferrix, who told Cassian he had to go, who stayed behind and quietly became a revolutionary in his absence. She said we'd miss each other, but that is love. What she says to the crowd, though, she says at the end, we've been sleeping. I've been sleeping. The Empire is a disease that thrives in darkness. Fight the Empire. And then the crowd ignites. And Marva Andor, who's an INFJ oracle, who saw what was coming long before anyone else admitted it, delivers her most powerful message from beyond the grave. She's a brick now, will be forever in the streets. But while her words spark a riot in the streets, her son Cassian is finding what the Empire left of Bix Colleen. What Dr. Gorst did to Bix wasn't physical torture, it was worse. He made her listen to the recorded screams of dying alien children on repeat until something inside her broke. And this kind of thing is one of the Empire's tools. The ones Luthen said he had to use against them to fight them. Cassian holds what those tools the Empire's use produce. He gets her out anyway, and then he brings her and meets up with Brasso, Will on B2, daughter of Ferrix. They're all on a ship. Marva's Riot is buying them the cover they need. So Cassian goes onto that ship. He has to make a choice. He looks at all these people he loves. Bix, who's still haunted and broken, Brasso, Wilmon, B2. He could just run with them, find somewhere quiet, try to disappear. But Luthen is still out there, and he knows Luthen is out to kill him as a loose end. The chess master with that loose end doesn't stop calculating. As long as Cassian is still a loose end, everyone in the ship is in danger. And the only way for Cassian to protect them is to stop being a loose end. And somewhere underneath that calculation, Nemec's manifesto is still in his hands. Kino's voice is still in his head. Marva's words are still in the air. The free agent who didn't do causes has one now. And he knows where Luthen parks his ship. So Cassian doesn't knock. He's already on that ship when Luthen arrives, in the shadows, waiting. So Luthen walks in and finds the man he ordered killed sitting in the dark of his own ship. Two men who have both lost everything, one deliberately, Luthen, and the other through this accumulation, Cassian. So what does Cassian do? Cassian doesn't threaten, doesn't negotiate, doesn't perform at all. Luthen is waiting for a calculation or a bargain or a show of fear. That's what people usually do. And that's what the chess master's algorithm expects from someone in this position. Instead, Cassian says, take out your weapon and kill me, or take me in. Cassian doesn't plea. He doesn't give any speech about the cause. No performance of loyalty. He's just a free agent who has done the internal calculation completely and is naming his conclusion out loud. So Luthen and his algorithm just breaks because everything Luthen values, honesty without agenda, commitment without performance, a man who cannot be manipulated because he isn't asking for anything. This man is sitting right in front of Luthen. And for the first time in a very long time, the chess master is not alone in the dark. Cassian isn't just joining the rebellion. He is the rebellion. He just finally knows it. Luthen doesn't shoot. And then everything that comes after in Rogue One and Andor's Season 2. The Death Star planned. And how to fight that. The spark that lights the fire across the galaxy begins here, in the scene in the dark on a ship with a man who walked into a gun and told the truth. So what comes next? Cassian works for Luthen. Really works for him now. No transaction, no exit strategy. All in. He steals, he infiltrates, he rescues. He does the things the rebellion needs done that nobody else can do quite the same way as Cassian. The free agent who didn't do causes becomes one of the most valuable people in the resistance. Everything Luthen saw before Cassian knew it was there. I guess in this timeline version of Cassian that Luthen maybe thought was there, but, he was going to kill him too. But what it cost Cassian in the long run and what it cost Bix, that's a story for another episode. We can say, here's what is. He doesn't fight because he stopped loving her. He fights because he finally understands that loving her means fighting the thing that broke her, even if it means he never gets to hold her again when they part. A man who started with nothing to lose slowly accumulated everything worth losing and gave it all away anyway. That's the free agent's journey, the ISTP. That's what the terrible mentor in the wig was building toward. In closing, we have Cassian Andor, the man who is not about a rebellion or a cause or a philosophy. He kept everyone at arm's length. He survived on instinct and asked very little of anyone else. He tried not to ask anything. He got a mentor who wore a wig and lied to him immediately. And somehow, through prison floors and funeral riots and a gun pointed at his chest in the dark, he became the spine of the entire rebellion. And again, if you've been a free agent ISTP like Cassian, or you love one of them, you know this arc doesn't feel heroic from the inside. It feels like loss, and then more loss. And then a choice that doesn't feel like a choice, because by the time you get there, you already know what you have to do. And maybe that's where some of you are right now. Tired, keeping people at arm's length, waiting for a cause that feels too big or too far away. The terrible mentor who throws you into that fire, sometimes that's the one who sees you most clearly. The cause you didn't ask for, sometimes it finds you anyway. The person who can't swim, who leads the rebellion of a prison floor, sometimes the most pragmatic person in the room does the most heroic thing just because the logic was undeniable. That's Maverick. ISTP. Cassian didn't become who he needed to be despite the losses. He became who he needed to be through the losses. So that's not just a Star Wars story. This is the human story of the hero's journey and just all the nitty-gritty and painful details. If you want to understand the psychology underneath it, why the free agent integrates this way, what it costs, what it produces, that's exactly what Seeds of Wisdom is here for. Before you go, tell me in the comments, who was the terrible mentor in your life who made you, if there is one? I have a feeling those of you who know exactly what I'm talking about. I had one. And next week, or later this week actually, we look at someone with the same architecture who made a completely different choice. No wig and much bigger weapons. I'll see you later. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy Andor.